Okay. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome to another session of Women at the Well. With me today is my co host, Carolyn Bonner, Michelle Gibson here. And this session is just going to be talking, just the two of us, over some tea and crumpets. Just having a casual conversation about what I like to call on repeat. You know, why do some people make the same relationship mistakes over and over and over again? And this came about um, from my co host here who loves to watch reality TV shows. And so I'll let you I'll let her tell you where this idea came from.
So I enjoy watching Love After Lockup. I like watching Paternity Court. Um, Married at First Sight is a biggie for me. Even Dr. Phil, I watch that. And a lot of times I don't watch it just for entertainment's sake. I watch it because I like to look at why people make the choices that they make. I'm kind of intrigued by that. So oftentimes I'll view it just to get a better understanding or a glimpse into a person's thought process of why they choose to repeatedly um, make the same decisions, kind of go for the same thing, and their life is just kind of on repeat. So as it came to my mind, I called Michelle and said, I don't know if this really makes sense, but what do you think about this? And as we started sharing and talking about it, we realized it's not just in a romantic relationship, but also in friendships as well. That we tend to pick the same people and do the same thing. And it's not necessarily that it's bringing us joy, but we do it. So we wanted to just kind of share our thoughts on what we think about it and why people make the decisions that they make. Now, I have to say early on, neither one of us are experts.
No, oh, absolutely
not. In
not.
this field or thought process or any of that. We just want to share our thoughts. And maybe as we share our thoughts with you, you'll think of things and look at things a little differently.
Right, right. Something may resonate with you or in your life.
Right.
Or someone that you know. And of course, you know, I have to do my little research, my biblical research. And this topic really is not new. No. There's a verse in the Bible that says, as a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. That's found in Proverbs 26 and 11. And Proverbs 13 and 15 says, as a result, the foolish person often finds themselves suffering hardship from their choices. Good understanding gains favor, but the way of the unfaithful is hard. So sometimes out of, I don't know, just peer pressure or not wanting to confront their past issues, not reviewing the previous relationship and why that failed. When you don't do those things, you tend to kind of repeat the same things over and over again.
Because you're going to what is familiar.
Yeah.
And so as a result of it, it's not necessarily that it's the best thing, but it's familiar. You know what to expect. Be it good or bad with the outcome. To a certain degree, you almost feel like you can control the situation. So you just kind of stick with that same pattern.
Right, but you may pick one thing. You know, we've had previous discussions about how someone gets together, and this is maybe in a romantic setting or situation, because of finances. You know, they're struggling, and so they're looking for some help, someone to help them so that they don't struggle less, not realizing that there's more to a relationship than just finances.
Right.
But they tend to settle.
Right. Or, as we stated too, in one of our conversations too, a lot of times too, the conversation is brought up, well, girl, I have my needs. So I have my needs, um, and so that's kind of why I put up with it. And so the question is to look at yourself and say, maybe he is meeting that particular need, but is he treating you in a way that represents the queen that you are? So a lot of this you have to look at your own self and determine what your self-worth is. Because if he's um, supplying your needs in that area and several other people, is that going to be enough for you? And if you can't say with 100% that's enough, then you need to kind of really reevaluate. And I know that's easier said than done, and so I'm not being so casual in it all. I know it's not as easy as it sounds, but what we want from this conversation is just for us to look at ourselves and recognize that we are queens, and how do we get someone to appreciate us if we're lacking our own appreciation to ourselves.
Right, and I think sometimes we don't, or we settle because we haven't really faced the things in our own lives. Past hurts and past traumas. We've just kind of swept it under the rug and not really dealt with it. And I think until you really deal with you,
right,
taking a deep dive into you, taking that mirror and really figuring out who you are, and knowing whose you are, and valuing you, like you said, the queen that we are, not only just giving that lip service, but actually believing in that and walking in that. And when you start to walk in that, you don't allow people to treat you any kind of way.
Right.
But you have to, it starts with you.
Exactly. And this also goes to not just romantic relationships, but this goes into friendships as well. If you start noticing that the people that you are in friendships with, they are not pouring anything into you, meaning you're not getting anything or gaining anything from them. And it's almost a taker. If it's not financially, it's emotionally. So you're being left empty while they've received from you. And if you start kind of looking at the patterns of your friendship or those people in your life, are they just takers? Or are they also pouring and you're pouring? So it's a mutual situation. Now, with any relationship, there are highs and lows, and we all go through a lot of personal things. So there might be a time where you're doing more pouring because your friend needs that. Whatever's going on in her life, she needs that. But if you're looking down the line of years and years, and it's like, she always needs that, and I'm just kind of here, then at that point, you kind of have to look and say, is she truly a friend, or is there something else? Do I need to have a conversation and say, I've been here for you, I will always be here for you, but this is what I need, which most of us kind of don't do. We walk away.
Right. We
walk away.
It's that part.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
In relationships have to be reciprocal.
I agree.
And so if you're the one who's pouring and pouring, because maybe you're good at it.
Right.
But if you never open up.
Right.
And say, and have that conversation.
Right.
Look here, girl.
Right.
I'm struggling, and this is where I'm struggling. And I don't know why we have, some of us, not all of us, but some of us, it's hard for us to do that. And I don't know if it's a guarded thing, or if it's a...
You mean to say something?
Yeah, to really, it's not guarded, but guarded in the sense that you don't want to be transparent enough to expose yourself because of fear that you would expose some weaknesses. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you're saying, just so I understand, are you saying from the person, so I'm the poor.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying me as the poor doesn't say to you?
Exactly.
Okay, I would agree with that. We're not ready for the consequences of it.
Okay.
So if I say to you, Michelle, I've been here, with you through blah, whatever the circumstances are,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like it's been going on an extremely long time. I have to be prepared for what you may possibly say.
Okay.
And that possibly say could change the dynamic of the relationship. So I've got to be okay or prepared if you say, what do you mean? Aren't we friends? And blah, it could be received badly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got to decide what I'm going to do with that badness. Or it could be the start of an even greater relationship, because this person says, well, your life seems perfect and I don't want to, what did I have to say to you? You've always been here for me. And so that's why I didn't say anything, because you seem like you always have everything together. So that's why I didn't say it. And so the whole dynamic of the relationship has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, girl, let me tell you, no, this and this and this was happening. I didn't share with you because I was trying to help you get through your issue.
Okay.
I didn't, so why was I going to bring other stuff when this is the place you were at?
Right.
So it starts with talking, but be prepared for what you may hear.
Okay.
And it may be a wonderful thing, and it could blossom your relationship so much more. Or it could be not what you want to hear, and then you have to decide how you're going to move forward. So you're pondering that, so go ahead.
No,
what's the pondering?
I'm just pondering. I'm thinking about the balance. There's got to be a balance in that. If you're pouring and pouring and pouring, and then at some point you get tired of pouring because it's not being reciprocated,
right?
You have to balance that. The fact that once I do, when do I share? When
right.
do I open up?
Yes.
When do I communicate that, hey, I need something?
Right.
And so and I don't know if that's the problem. Some women don't say anything because of fear of the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're complaining.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? This is really no difference between a friendship relationship and a romantic relationship. And I think a lot of it, we're on repeat because nothing's communicated and no change. The biggest issue of why we repeat behavior is that we're not prepared to change. So,
we're not prepared. We don't want to.
We don't want to. We're not prepared. And so we tend to just kind of be in the same cycle of things.
We don't know how to change.
We don't know how to change. All that change is scary.
Mm-hmm.
So it is different for everyone. With me, and I'm learning that for me, change is not difficult at all. Mm-hmm. It really is not from anything. It could be the smallest things to the biggest things. It's just not a big deal. Where for other people, it's a struggle. And I have to always say, Carolyn, that is them, and it's not how they think. You think differently than they think, and it's okay. But this is what you chose to do. And so I realized, like, I can just hop up and move and do some stuff and it not be a problem. And other people are like, well, wait just a minute. We need to calm down and just kind of reevaluate. And I'm already gone while they're reevaluating, because inherently, just Carolyn Bonner, I can just move forward very quickly. And I'm learning that isn't how everyone. That's not how everybody moves.
No, that's not how I move.
You know, some people really need to process. They need time to think about it. You know, they need to. You know, they just. So for me, and I'm glad to have this conversation, talk out loud, because I am learning this. Is I'm like, what you processing? You know, I don't understand it. And so I'm learning that, okay, Carolyn Bonner, everybody, I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of shout out all these ideas, and everybody was sitting there, you know, kind of staring at me. And I'm thinking, and I'm getting frustrated. You know, like, why doesn't anybody have an idea? And what is going on? And, you know, let's get moving. And after the meeting was over, and nobody shared, and after the meeting was over, someone pulled me aside and said, you're not giving us time to even think. You want to immediately answers and call out stuff. And that's not how most people work, Carolyn. And I really had to stop and think about it, because I spent most of the meeting extremely frustrated. And I'm the only person in the room frustrated, because everybody else is processing and listening. And then I did have text messages the following day with ideas of things. And my first thought was,
why did you say this at the meeting?
Why did you say it at the meeting? And why did you take so, good Lord, it took you that long for that one thought? And then I had to say, oh, that's not them. Carolyn, you think quickly on your feet like that. Everyone doesn't.
Right.
So kind of understanding you, knowing you, but don't expect everybody to be you.
Right. Sometimes though, when you make decisions quickly and you don't think them through, that can lead to repeating the same.
I agree.
Bad behavior.
I agree.
You know, you do things on impulse.
I agree.
And then it becomes compulsive, and you don't have time to look at the past and say, okay, I'm doing the same thing. Why, if it didn't work before, how can I expect it to work again?
Because you wished something would. A lot of what we do too is wish and hope that it would be different. We don't necessarily take examples from the past. We isolate those situations that was what it was.
That didn't work.
That didn't work. So here we are. Even though the person that you're dealing with, the characteristics are extremely similar to what you were dealing with before. But in this situation, we say, well, we just hope for something different. We wish that
that's not the same person.
Right.
So
exactly.
This time
exactly
it's gonna be better.
Exactly.
This time it's gonna be right.
Right. Exactly. And let me give this a chance, even though it looks very similar to what you had before. So the question is, why aren't we looking for something that looks different than what we had before, since we know what that kind of looks, because we dealt with it, because it's very similar. So why not try something new? So that's why not challenge yourself to try something new? And if that's disastrous, okay, because you're already in something that's similar that was disastrous kind of repeatedly. So why not take the chance to try this that's different?
Sometimes we don't recognize initially the similarities.
Okay.
You know, because we think it's a new person. So we're hopeful, whether it's just a friendship or a romantic friendship, we're hopeful because it's a different person. So in their mind, it's already different because it's a different person.
Okay.
So you don't really, not immediately, you don't recognize until sometimes it's too late. And then you're in
it.
The middle of the relationship. And then you stop to think about, you know what, the same thing, but it's too late.
Okay. And what do we do? So we're in a situation where we're friends, and you have chosen this person that you're choosing to see, who is very similar to the other three that we have seen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, as a friend, because we talked about standing in the gap for
Mm-hmm.
someone, which means be that filler for someone. We use it as it relates to Christ, which we definitely will get. We'll talk more about that. But as a friend, if you see repeat behavior, what is our response typically? What is our response typically that people do? Do they say anything? Do they wait and see? Are they scared to say something because maybe they don't have a man, so they're scared to address it? Or maybe they're married, and they don't want to. And I'll speak for me because I do have, single friends. And so it's always that fine line of me saying something and then them coming back and saying, well, you don't understand. You've been married for a long time. I don't think you're in a position to tell me anything because boom, boom, you had all these years of marriage. And so they're not, I have had situations where they haven't been, it hasn't gone over well when I've tried to share, and even when I've tried to come in a situation of love and say, I have these concerns, and even kind of laid out why I have these concerns, thinking that that would help because I've given examples, and it almost made it worse. So that's when it made our relationship worse. So that's what I was saying. If we share, we have to be prepared for the consequences.
Yeah.
Because what do you do? Once someone fires at you like that, then is your thought process, okay, that's you, I told you. So I'll be here when this falls apart. Or if it goes well, I'm here too. Or do you say, okay, this didn't go over well, so I'm going to give her complete space and I'm going to remove myself?
Yeah, I think all of the above that you talked about. But I think the majority of people tend to not say anything for all those various reasons. They're scared that it may change the relationship. They're scared of how whatever they might say is going to be received. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to appear to be bossy and like I'm running your life because it is your life. So the majority of people just tend to just sit back and until it gets to a point where it is blatantly obvious and on the verge of going extremely wrong and detrimental to that person's life, do they say something?
Now, if we see this repeat behavior and we are a friend to someone, and not acquaintance, but a true friend to someone, is it our responsibility as a friend to say something because of the love we have for the friend?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
No matter what the outcome.
Okay.
Of course, it is how you approach that person.
I agree.
But I think if we never said anything and something bad really happened, I think that would be worse than what you might perceive would happen with the relationship.
Okay.
Case in point, I was looking at this show, the talk show, and there was a guest on the show that was in the limelight and had seemingly everything going for her. She even was married, and she was struggling. And people noticed different little changes in her behavior, but nobody ever said anything. And she ended up trying to take her own life. And she was unsuccessful, thank goodness. But what she shared was that she needed someone to say something. And no one did. No one did. And she said, even she was surrounded by family and friends, but there was just this pressure, this societal pressure to perform and to do this and to do that. And she would, make subtle comments here and there. She was tired, she didn't want to do that anymore, but she felt pressured to do it. And her little comments just went on deaf ears. So that's why I was quick to say yes.
Right.
If
it could be that they heard, but what do we do that? I mean, what do we do with it? In some cases, it could be, well, girl, you need to continue to do that to make money or whatever the case may be. For other people, they think it's a phase, or, for other people, well, I don't really want to, she kind of threw it out there, but if it was really bad, she would tell me. Because sometimes, too, that we wait for someone to tell it. Like, we know it's going bad. They know it's going bad. But we kind of don't want to say anything because we're just kind of waiting because maybe she's not ready to talk about it. So we're here. I hear that. I was just waiting, and when she came, I was gonna share, but I was just waiting. So I think the wait. I think as the true friendship goes, that we have to take a chance, and we have to step out and say, I see that this is a pattern. I see something that's going on. And of course, always present this in love. And really, as a Christian, we should pray before we go. And ask God to really allow the confrontation to open up. And then that we're able to share, but not only share, that she's able to receive it. He or she is able to receive it. But it is our responsibility, I believe, as a friend and even as a Christian, that we need to ask questions and in love. And all the time, I'm not going to say that it will always be received. Sometimes in the moment, it may not be received the way we thought it. Sometimes it would take a couple of days for the person, they might have gone, kind of off and been upset. And it take a couple of days for them to kind of think on it and say, okay, I realized that you were coming to me and you were coming from a good place, but I just wasn't ready to hear that. I hear what you're saying, and we have to be prepared for the but I'm choosing to hang in here a little longer, or I'm choosing to, and this could be about a friendship as well. I've known her a long time, so I'm just going to kind of deal with it because, I know her. So as us who are there to share, we have to be prepared for whatever response we may get because we just don't know.
Right. I had a thought because you said she, or he.
Yeah.
And a thought just popped into my head. Do men have the same kind of struggles with relationships like women do?
Yes. My best friend's a man.
Right, which is why
my best friend is a man, and he totally does.
Okay.
So it does not change. Believe it or not, sometimes, and I'm probably going to get some bounce back, sometimes men are a little bit more sensitive than women, but they don't outwardly say it in the same manner.
Yeah.
But yes, 100%, I can say that my best friend is a male, and we've been friends for a very long time, and yes.
Wow. Because my experience is that men tend not to share and want to get involved. They just, they'll deal with that. They'll figure it out, or that's on they're on their own. And I would love, especially in a romantic situation, because sometimes men can see what other men are doing in the behavior where a woman can't see.
Okay, I would agree with that, yes.
And so it just would be nice, but I don't think, society has kind of groomed male and female to respond the same way.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I definitely would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because you're considered to be soft, or,
right. Women are very emotional.
Yes, and all of that. Yes, yeah. that is very true.
Yeah.
That is very true.
One of the things that I was looking at was that mental illness and depression, um, mental health seems to be a lot more prevalent, more now than ever before. And it seems to be that way, maybe because in the past no one was ever talking about mental health and depression. And now society, I think, is recognizing that it is a problem,
Right.
and it really is a disease. And so they're beginning to talk about it more now than ever before. But sometimes that can be a factor in relationships because it affects their behavior.
I would agree with that.
And so people tend to kind of make the same, not realizing that there really is something wrong
Right.
with their own selves.
Right. I would definitely agree with that. No, do I think it's something that is new, or I don't think that it's an abundance more now than it was. I think it's talked about more.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more talk about going to counseling or seeking help, where before, definitely the era that I grew up in was, we're going to pray on that thing and God will fix it, and that was about all that you could do. And definitely in African American family and community, we just didn't talk a lot at all. You carry secrets to the grave, even if you kind of thought something was wrong. You wouldn't mention it, and you definitely wouldn't mention it outside of the four walls of your home.
Right.
That was totally out of the question. I think things are, and praise God, I'm so thankful that things are out in the open more. As I mentioned on, several conversations with me personally, and me seeking counseling after the loss of my mom, was one of the best things that ever happened. Not only because of the fact that I was able to really process and talk about the grief I was experiencing, which I thought at the time was depression, but it was grief. But also, we went way back. So I went in to talk about one thing because I thought that was kind of the crux of my problem. And she took me all the way back. And at first, that wasn't very comfortable. And I questioned why we needed to go back to my childhood, and why is that important. And as we talked about kind of my experience as a child up until my adulthood and then losing my mom, a lot of the patterns were very familiar of what I was doing because I grew up with it. So certain things I was doing wasn't necessarily the right thing to do, but that's what I knew. So I was just kind of carrying it along. And I think with a lot of us, we carry a lot of things along because that's what we're familiar with. That's what we saw. We saw our moms, grandmothers, aunties, whoever else. And we just kind of carry these things.
So it's a learned behavior.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
From, to, what the color of your skin looks like, to the texture of your hair. I mean, because we got into discussions about that. And I remember how that was kind of, how that kind of shapes you about certain things. Because that was talked about and that was a big deal in your household. Now, you weren't necessarily talking about it outside. But a lot of those things, more than you'll ever know, you carry that right along. And what you carry right along, you give right along to your children. And it just continues to be kind of a pattern. So I recommend, and I highly recommend, that there are some things that you can talk to your pastor about. There's some things you can talk about to your friends about. But there are some things that you need to go and talk to someone who's a professional. Not to mention that there's a level of freedom of talking to a complete stranger.
Right.
Because there's no judgment. You
Right.
get up and leave, that's the end of that. So it also gives you an outlet of freedom. That's how I felt. So I'm a big advocate on that if you start really looking at your life and the things that hopefully from this conversation has opened you to make you think about, I kind of do the same thing why am I in the same boat all the time? Why is this happening? I would recommend really talking to somebody.
So that leads me to ask, what was it that you saw in yourself that led you to say, okay, maybe I need to talk to a therapist to begin with? Because some people don't recognize that they're doing the same thing over and over again, which is why they keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
So what signs, what are some of the things that you noticed that maybe wasn't working, or what led you to go?
I felt, and because mine was prompted from grief, I felt dark all the time. Okay. So meaning I was still going to work, I was still doing that, but there was literally, if I can describe it in a way, that there is, when heavy rain showers come and there's, the clouds get dark.
Yeah.
Literally, it was one on top of my head.
Wow. That's what you felt.
That's how I felt. Okay. I felt like it was just a cloud that I could not shake, and it was just and it was becoming lower and lower. Ooh. So it started here, and as time went on, it became lower and lower and lower to the point where I almost felt suffocation. And I said, okay, I think at that point I thought, well, I think I'm having a breakdown. And I remember telling my husband at the time, and this was a year and a half after my mom passed, telling my husband, I think I need to talk to somebody. I think I'm losing it. And his first response was, thank God. And let's go. And this is a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned this. And he said, thank God. I am so happy. He goes, I've just been waiting for you to say something. And I wasn't saying anything because I just thought this was a process of grief. I didn't know really what you were going through because my parents are still here. And so I was just waiting. Now, thankfully, I ended up going to a counselor, and it was a wonderful thing. But that waiting is a problem. Yeah. Because a lot of things could have happened in this year and a half, in this waiting.
Right.
And so that was one thing. As he thought, he was helping by, we're just going along. Yeah. And we're just not saying anything. Here for you,
woo, woo, woo.
Right. But we're just going along. Yeah. And so that's a really good point, that even in in this marriage that I had, he didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything. And I'm just, here really literally drowning. And he's waiting for me to speak up.
It's the same thing as a friend.
Exactly.
Looking over here.
Exactly.
But they're just watching you spiral.
Right.
But they're not going to say anything. That's why I'm like, a true friend, yes.
Right.
Immediately. Because you never know how long the person has been feeling that way.
Exactly.
You said it was a year and a half.
It was a year and a half.
And you never know if you don't, even if you're wrong.
Right.
But people should say something.
Exactly.
Because it could be too late.
It could be.
The person that that was on this talk show, and she was telling her story, her sister ended up committing suicide because her sister felt the same way. And she felt really, really bad because she was kind of going through the same thing, but she didn't speak up. And her sister was successful in taking her life. She was not successful. She survived. And it wasn't until that happened that she finally told people. Everybody thought what happened was she tried to take her life by in a car accident. She's going to drive into like a guardrail. But she survived. And everybody thought it was just an accident. But it wasn't, months after she finally told them it was not an accident. She meant to do that. And so communication and opening up,
key.
and when you see something, say something.
Yes. Yes.
You have to speak up.
Right. And when you come out of it, say something.
Yes.
So it's wonderful that is this journey that she went on, which was horrible,
Mm-hmm.
but from it, she's sharing, and that sharing, I know from someone who was watching it, made a difference. So we were created for purpose. We're not just on the earth to be.
Right.
So we were created for purpose, and in that purpose, we have to move to help others, whatever that is, whatever situation you're in, to not have your friend. It could be not as serious as somebody wanting to commit suicide, but for someone to be in a very dark place or a very unhappy place of repeated behavior year after year after year after year after year. And all that really does is wear down on the other person to the point where it can become a physical illness.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a charge to be that advocate for that friend if we see them going in that pattern. For those of us who don't maybe have that close of friends,
Mm-hmm.
Look at your own situation and say, am I doing the same thing?
Mm.
And if I'm doing the same thing, what can I do different? And change is very, very difficult. I heard this song today about, which I thought was such a great song, and it said, changing your story. That's the name of the song.
Mm.
And as I listened to it today, I said, well, you know what? I'm so thankful that I heard this song, because I'm going to say it today in our conversation, that we have to be willing to change our story. If we are unhappy, or with all of us, there are tweaks that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're not necessarily doing major repeats, but all of us do repeat something
Mm-hmm.
that we could tweak and make better and change the story of our lives. Because there's only one us. We're given this one time,
Yep.
one life.
Mm-hmm.
We want to live a fulfilled life. So think about your story and changing the story that you're currently in. And really pray for the Lord to give you the strength to make that change if change is difficult for you. Surround yourself by people who are positive, that can pour into you and give you something. Not just be present,
Mm-hmm.
but can give you something to uplift you, encourage you, make you better, make you think of things. So not just because you got a friend, because all friends aren't good friends. They're really not. Mm-hmm. It's difficult because I know people might have friends from childhood, and you kind of know, like, I probably need to let her go. But she's been a constant. So either have a conversation and say, girl, my life is a little different now. And so what we used to do when we was back in college or high school, I'm in another place now that I'm 50.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make this change. Are you okay with it? You know, even to the point where I'm not saying throw your friend aside, but tell her where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And she might need to hear that and say, girl, me too, I'm kind of wore out. Or it could be, really? You kidding? And let her assure that, you know, this is kind of the direction I'm going. Now, she can choose to go along with the direction you're going. I'm not saying change her life, but accept that this is where you are versus you kind of tagging on to her.
Mm-hmm.
And see where it goes. But I think the key in all this is that we've got to talk, we've got to communicate, and then change does have to happen. Because our story should change, meaning our story should evolve, and we should be getting better with time as we gain wisdom, or the hope is as we grow, we gain wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hope.
Okay.
Did we cover all the points?
I think we did.
Okay.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
You know, I had a thought about what you said about having a conversation with that friend and telling them all right, this is kind of where you are, and this is where I am, and then we're not going in the same direction. I don't know if I'd be so quick to let that person go, because that person may be clinging on, and I don't know if I want to use the word clinging, but just kind of there in your life because they need you.
Okay.
to help them. So I think this is where you have to be careful when you're talking to them, and when you should be getting them to kind of take a look at themselves, as opposed to, okay, well, I'm now over here, so
yeah, no, I wasn't saying it in
Yeah.
that kind of what in that. I don't want to come across that harsh, but I wanted to have a conversation and say this is kind of where I am, which clearly, more than likely, you've probably had that conversation before, maybe even lightly, meaning she wanted to do something,
Mhm.
and you kind of said, well, I'm gonna not do that or whatever. Come on, girl, you can come on, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So you've kind of said something, or it's kind of been leading, and you hope that she kind of got a hint, or you hope that he or she is kind of seeing that your life is taking a different turn. And maybe she doesn't want to see it, or she doesn't want to accept it, or she knows you from where you were before. So she's pushing. You're not really saying anything. Sometimes you kind of hang because you don't want to hear her mouth.
Mhm.
Other times you like, no, she's fussing. She continues to do whatever, and no one's really having that conversation. So I'm not saying as quick as boom, but I am saying as you have kind of been subtly telling her, and the message is not coming, then it's you do, I need to tell you what's going on with me. Maybe you noticed this is kind of where I am now. And you have to be prepared. What you mean? What you mean by that? And you're like, well, I kind of, that's not where I am right now.
Yeah.
And see how she's going to receive it. He or she's going to receive it. Yeah. And it might be a little separation for a while. Not saying that you've ended the relationship, but she might not be comfortable where you are, because she's not there. And then it could be received as judgment against her. So then it's like,
so what do you do at that point?
So what you do is you tell her, you know what, we've had this, I love you, but this is just kind of where I am. Well, that's not where I am. Okay. Then over here, I'm not necessarily severing it. I say always be available to it, but recognize right now where she is, you might be making her feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Because she's, if she's doing her thing, even if you told her, look, okay, it's the same thing you doing, no, here we go. Well, that's where I want to be. Well, okay, I wanted to tell you. So it might be a pulling away on her part, and you just kind of, over here. Now, the question is this, depending on how long this, because it could take her longer. So it could be a longer time, and I'm not talking about 30 days. Yeah. It could be years in the process, and the person comes back. The challenge is, as you're moving, and she's just now kind of coming to this point, what you do with that. I don't know. And I can't necessarily say, and this is just speaking for Carolyn, I can't necessarily say that I would necessarily welcome. Well, I won't say I won't welcome. I would say I don't know. It would really be kind of, because as you're moving forward and your relationships are changing and stuff change, as stuff goes on, It might be that you're just at a different place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I'll end it with I don't know. For me, I'll say for me.
I think the bottom line in all of that is that you make sure that the lines of communication are open,
Okay.
constantly open, and that you're talking and you're communicating, and when you see something and you can help, approach it from being a helpful person, a helpful standpoint, and then just kind of let the chips fall where they may.
Fall where they may, yeah.
You've communicated, you're growing, your prayer is that she's growing, and maybe the two of you will get back to an even better relationship,
right.
Or not, or maybe it was meant to be just for that season, and then you move forward.
Okay.
So,
and when we refer to seasons, what we're talking about is that literally how the seasons change. When you're looking at a calendar, the same thing can occur with relationships. Some seasons are for a lifetime. Some seasons are, a month. Some seasons are 5 years. Some it's wherever you are at that moment with that person and however long it lasts. But during that time, I'm still a firm believer that there was purpose in that.
Right.
So I don't believe that people haphazardly come in your life and you just kind of met them and it was no. That when you meet somebody, it is a purpose in that. It could be for them to pour into you, you pour into them. It could be a learning process at that time. It could be a lot of different things. But nothing haphazardly happens. Situations can cause you, even if they're bad situations, cause you to grow and be living testimonies of someone else. So there's always a purpose in everything.
Right. So our time is just about up.
Okay.
Kind of summarize, things that we've talked about this evening, taking a look at past relationships, what went wrong, and really analyzing what went wrong in the past relationship, the other person's part, but also recognizing your part in it as well. So that takes a lot of self-examination, self-evaluation, and then really start to recognize your self-worth. Know that you are worth so much more than probably what you have been used to receiving in your life, and making that change. And then communicating with the other person, being open and honest and transparent.
And as I stated earlier, changing your story and doing that and being able to do that, and the only how we can really do it is having a relationship with Jesus Christ. He is the healer. There's many of us who have been hurt by relationship, a romantic relationship as well as friendships. And restoration is needed, and that comes from accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior. He is the greatest comforter. He is definitely the one that gives you peace. And so we invite you to join us on Sundays at Changing Lives Christian Ministry, 3750 San Pablo Dam Road in El Sobrante, California. Our service starts at 10:30. We would love to have you. We want you to have joy in your life. And joy doesn't mean necessarily always happy, but joy means you have peace. And you can only have that through Jesus Christ. So we are so grateful that you have tuned in and watched us today. And we pray that something that we shared is a help. And if it's not a help to you, pass it on to somebody else so it can be a help to them. God bless you. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.